Once again, without any further delay, would you give a warm welcome to our very own pastor, Gary Kelly.
Well, good afternoon, friends. It's certainly a privilege to be with you here once again, and I believe we're going to have a fascinating time together this afternoon as we open and investigate one of the most amazing prophecies found anywhere in the world. It's a prediction that was written 2,500 years ago, which in a short 150 words outlines the major events in world history. A copy of this prediction, this prophecy, was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1948. And it reopened an interest in the ancient scrolls and the writings of the Hebrew prophets. So that is the focus of our time together this afternoon. Our topic, who will control the world? Interesting subject as we look at the changing nature of the world political scene today. We see new powers coming to the fore. We see old ones slowly and with reluctance moving off the scene. What's happening and where is it all going to lead? That's our topic today. You've probably never heard of Charles Havlett. And that's no surprise. His family moved from his ancestral homeland in Czechoslovakia to the United States of America, where they settled in Dorchester, Nebraska. There were 3 boys in this family: Charles, the oldest, then there was Rudy, and the youngest, Adolf. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and the United States entered the Second World War, all 3 sons enlisted. 2 of them joined the 803rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, and they were sent first to England. They got their machinery, their equipment ready. They landed on Omaha Beach and very quickly set off to encounter the enemy. They travelled very quickly through Belgium, through Holland, first through North France, but then Belgium, Holland, and then they crossed the Rhine River and they were on their way into enemy territory, into Germany. They were on a winning side. The die had been cast. Victory was in sight. As their battalion moved through Germany, they made a turn, made their way through Austria and back to his ancestral homeland, Czechoslovakia. He joined a reconnaissance group from his battalion. His job was to travel in a jeep as part of a platoon, part of a convoy. And on the 7th of May 1945, they drove on a dirt road about 12 kilometers across the border into Czechoslovakia. And as they made their way along this dirt road, they were ambushed by soldiers belonging to the 11th Panzer Division, German soldiers. Caught them off guard, caught them by surprise. Their convoy was just strapped with heavy machine gun fire and light arms. Well, Charles grabbed his rifle and he fired at the enemy before ducking down behind the jeep that he was travelling in. Having fired off his first salvo, he then came up behind the jeep, the bonnet of the jeep, exactly where he ducked down, preparing to fire again at the enemy, when he was struck in the head by a German bullet and killed instantly. Charles Havlett should never have died. Because you see, a ceasefire had been implemented 10 minutes before his platoon were ambushed. Ceasefire had been signed, it had gone into effect, but tragically, the German soldiers had not heard about it. Charles Havlett was looking forward to going home. The war was over. He was looking forward to getting back to Mum's cooking. He was going to return home a hero, having been part of the military force that had freed France and Europe. His dreams came to an end on the 7th of May 1945 on a dirt road just inside his ancestral homeland. He was the last Allied soldier to die in World War II. Unnecessary. Unnecessary. It was unfair, it was unjust, and it was unnecessary. On his way home, planning to be returned to his family, his loved ones. Instead, he was buried here, St. Arvold World War II Cemetery near Metz in northern France. What a tragedy. So unnecessary. And friends, that gives us just a small idea of the futility of war in general, and specifically the Second World War. You see, Adolf Hitler had determined that he was going to unite Europe and establish an empire that would last for 1,000 years. He called it the 1,000-Year Reich. And because of this passion, this drive to establish this empire, he plunged the world into the largest, most devastating war that this world has ever seen. World War II was the first genuine global war. Every continent was involved. 61 countries were involved in that war, with a population of 2 billion people. At that time, 3/4 of the Earth's population. Charles Havlett was one of 62 million people, soldiers and civilians, who died as a result of World War II. Think of that, 62 million people. And you know, it was all unnecessary. It was unnecessary. Because an ancient prophecy clearly outlined the outcome, the final result of this war. It was unnecessary. The result was already outlined. Outlined in an ancient prophecy. So, what was this prophecy? This prophecy that predicted major world events from 2,500 years right down through time. This prophecy that clearly outlined the future of Europe. Well, Adolf Hitler rejected the Bible and the prophecy. And in 1941, he made a significant speech to the German people. And this is what he said. See, my people, we do not need anything from God. We do not ask anything from Him except that He may let us alone. We want to fight our own war with our own guns, without God. We want to gain our victory without the help of God. You see, friends, Adolf Hitler believed that he could conquer Europe with the strength of his armies and establish a world empire that would last for 1,000 years. But there was a German soldier by the name of Franz Hasel. He was enlisted when he was 40 years of age, had a family already. He was a pacifist, wouldn't carry a weapon. He became part of the elite pioneer company, the 699 Pioneer Company, and they were sent to the Russian front. Franz believed the Bible. He was familiar with this ancient prophecy. And so, at fear of death, he went to his commanding officer and he told him that there is no way Hitler was going to win this war. The German army is doomed. Imagine telling your commanding officer that. On their way to the Eastern Front, on their way to Russia. But friends, the amazing thing is this. His commanding officer actually took notice of what he said. And he took extra rations so that he would be able to make a safe retreat. On the Russian front, 2.7 million soldiers died. German soldiers died on the Russian front. Another 2.6 million German soldiers were taken prisoner. Franz Hasel returned home safely because he believed the prophecy. He believed the prediction that was written by the Hebrew prophet Daniel. His story begins, or this story begins, in ancient Babylon. Babylon was the golden city of the ancient world. It truly was a magnificent city with towers and palaces and temples. It was a city that was renowned throughout the ancient world. Probably the most wealthy and magnificent city ever built. It was home not just of wonderful palaces and temples. In fact, Nebuchadnezzar's palace is believed to be the most fabulous building ever constructed. It was the home of the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. You see, Nebuchadnezzar married a princess from Media, further inland, up in the mountains. And when she came down to the plains of Babylonia, it was flat and boring and uninteresting, and she pined. She was homesick for the mountains of Media. And so Nebuchadnezzar, being a good, loving husband, decided to change things and appease her. And so he built the magnificent Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the second of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But this great warrior King Nebuchadnezzar, in the year 605 BC, set out on military conquest. He took the great and vast and well-trained armies of Babylon, and he travelled across the fertile plain from Babylon. He travelled up here, down through along the coast of the Mediterranean. He came down here. He defeated the Egyptians, the great Egyptian army. He wiped them. And then, on his way back, he besieged the city of Jerusalem. He not only besieged it, he attacked the city, he plundered it, he robbed the temple of many of its beautiful golden vessels, and he took vast numbers of the inhabitants captive back to Babylon. You see, friends, in those days, ancient kings had a practice. They would take the cream of, particularly the youth of a nation, take them back with them to their homeland, and there train them to serve their empire. Amongst those captives was a young Hebrew by the name of Daniel. Daniel was taken as a prisoner of war from Jerusalem all the way back to Babylon. He hadn't been in Babylon very long when there was a huge commotion in the palace. The king had had a dream. He'd gone to bed that night, deeply concerned about the well-being and future of his empire. What does the future hold for me, my family, and my empire? And with those thoughts troubling him, he fell into a fitful sleep that night. And he had a dream. He had a dream that he believed contained omens regarding the future. When he woke up the next morning, he couldn't remember what he dreamed. I'm sure we can all relate to that. There are times we wake up, we remember we dreamt something, but we just can't remember all the details. But we would never do what Nebuchadnezzar did. He called in all his wise men, the magicians, the astrologers, the soothsayers, the palm readers. People who participated in the dark practices of the occult. And these individuals claimed to be able to communicate with the gods and therefore able to read people's minds and to know what the future holds in store. And so Nebuchadnezzar calls them in and he says to them, I had a dream. I've had a dream that troubles me. And I want to know what it means. I am convinced that this dream has huge significance. He said, you are in touch with the gods. You claim to be able to read human minds. You are able to predict the future. Tell me what I dreamed. And after you've told me what I dreamed, then I want you to tell me what it means. These guys were in a difficult position. They were in trouble. And so you can imagine they fumbled and they fluffed and they began to discuss this predicament with each other. And then they had to come before the king and they said, look, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream. If you will tell us the dream, we will then give you the interpretation. Tell us the dream. You see, friends, what they've been doing with this. The king would come before them and say, well, I had a dream last night, gentlemen. And this is what it was. And they would whisper amongst themselves, and then they would come back and say, well, king, this is what it means. But you see, the king did not want the interpretation. He wanted the dream itself. They were uncertain whether he was putting them to the test or not. They were uncertain. They didn't know whether he really knew what he dreamt and was testing them, or whether he had really forgotten. So they dare not just cook up something. Nebuchadnezzar was a guy you didn't mess with. Don't mess with King Nebuchadnezzar. So he said, listen, tell me the dream, and if you can tell me the dream, then I will know that you can interpret it for me. He said, time for the games to end. You claim to be in touch with the gods. You claim to be able to read the future. You claim to be working in these arts of the occult. Now's the time to prove it. Come on. You tell me the dream, and if you can tell me the dream and you get it right, then I'll be able to trust your interpretation. Otherwise, I tell you the dream and you just make up anything you like. These guys realized now that they were in serious trouble. Serious trouble. So they said, listen, King, there isn't a man alive who can tell others what they have dreamed. Stop being unreasonable. This is an impossible thing the king requires. No one except the gods can tell you your dream, and they're not here to help us. So they had to own up. They had to tell the king the absolute truth, that they really were not in touch with the gods, that they really couldn't tell the future, that they really couldn't read people's minds. What they were saying is, listen, king, you've been paying us these enormous wages. We've been living like royalty here in your palace, but we are nothing but frauds. King Nebuchadnezzar got very angry. Very angry. When he realized that he'd been deceived all these years. And so he called in his soldiers and he said, execute every one of the wise men. Every one of them. Execute them and turn their houses into a dunghill. He was angry. Really angry. Now Daniel, the young prince from Jerusalem, although he wasn't part of this group that had been called into the palace, he was just a novice, but he was still considered one of the wise men. And so when Nebuchadnezzar said, kill the wise men, kill every last one of them, Daniel was included in that group. And when the soldiers came for Daniel, he knew nothing about it. He said, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? He said, listen, just give me a minute. Notice what he said. At this, Daniel went to the king. He said, please let me go and speak to the king. He goes to the king. And he asked for some time. He said, King, give me some time so that he might interpret the dream for him. The Bible book of Daniel then tells us in detail what happened. As soon as the king reluctantly gave him time, Daniel, I can assure you, hurried, ran full steam back to his home, and he explained it to his friends. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends. They were in serious trouble. Guys, if we don't come up with the answer, we're finished. The king's going to kill every wise man, and we're part of the group. What do you think they did? Notice what they did. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Daniel prayed to the God of the Hebrews, to the great Jehovah God. Friends, let me tell you something. This is still the best way to obtain supernatural help. If you want to deal with the mysteries of your own life, the challenges that you are facing, and we all face challenges, it's different for each and every one of us. For some it might be a health problem. For others it might be an issue at work. Some of us may be struggling with family relationships. Whatever issues you are dealing with in your life, The best way to get help is to communicate with the God of Daniel. So they take this matter to their God in prayer. Now, friends, just get the picture of what's happening here. You have the wise men, these individuals practicing in the dark arts of the occult, astrology, magic, and so on. You've got them claiming that their gods can tell the dream in the future. And now you have Daniel in competition with them, as it were. He takes the matter to his God and asks his God to provide the answer that he needs to save his life. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. As he slept that night after his prayer, the God of the Hebrews, Jehovah God, showed him the mystery, showed him what the king had seen in his dream. And so as soon as he was up the next morning, he raced to Arioch. And he said, "Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Hold on. Put a hold on it. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him." Imagine this young Jewish boy, this Hebrew kid, he's led into the palace of the most mighty monarch the world has ever seen. Imagine. I can imagine what that king was thinking. Hey, listen, if my wise men, with all their experience, with all their knowledge, with all their training, if they cannot come up with the answer, who do you think you are? So he says to Daniel, "Can you tell me what my dream was and what it means?" He gets straight to the point. No messing about, no pleasantries, just directly to it. Can you or can't you? Because you know what the outcome's going to be if you can't. Then Daniel owns up. He says, "Listen, king, with all due respect and honor, no wise man, no astrologer, no magician or wizard can tell the king such things. No one can provide you with the answer to the question that you're putting out." But he says, "But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has told you in your dream what will happen when? In the future." Daniel says, "King Nebuchadnezzar, these wise men of yours, these guys involved in the occult, astrology, wizards, magicians, but there is a God in heaven. He does know the future, and he's given you this dream to tell you the future, and he's going to give you the meaning of the dream as well." I imagine Nebuchadnezzar says, "Get on with it then. Don't wait any longer. Give it to me. I want it now." And so he says, "Well, king, as you're lying there, O king, your mind turned to what?" He says, "You went to bed that night, and as you went to bed, you were worried about things that are going to happen in the future. Your mind turned to things to come. And the revealer of mystery showed you in your dream what is going to happen." He said, "You looked. There before you in your dream, you saw a large statue, enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance." He says, while you were lying there, in your sleep, you dreamed and you saw this massive statue, dazzling, awesome in appearance. And then he describes the statue. He goes into the detail. You see, he doesn't just say, "You saw a statue." He says, you saw a statue, and I'm going to tell you exactly what that statue looked like. So you will know for sure that I'm on the money here, that I'm telling you exactly what you saw. So he says, this statue, the head of the statue is made of what? Pure gold. So he says, you saw this massive statue. The head, pure gold. Its chest and arms were of what? Silver. Then we come down to the belly and thighs. What were the belly and thighs made of? Bronze or brass. So he says, King, you saw this statue, and it's massive, it's awesome, it's stupendous, it's dazzling. It's made up of different metals. The head's made of gold. The chest and arms are made of silver. The thighs are bronze. And then he goes on and he says, and the legs were of iron. Solid iron legs on this statue. But then when you get down to the feet are a mixture of iron and what? And baked clay. There it is, King. That's what you saw. And then he said, as you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. And notice what this rock does. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay, and it smashed them. And then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were broken in pieces and became like what? Chaff on the threshing floor. He says, King, that crushed, broken, smashed statue, the wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But he says, you know that rock? That rock that hit the statue on its feet of iron and clay. That rock, it became huge like a mountain, and it filled the whole earth. He says, King Nebuchadnezzar, that's what you saw in your dream. I can imagine King Nebuchadnezzar now having to hold on to his seat. He's so excited. He wants to jump up. He wants to say, Daniel, that is exactly what I saw. Exactly what I saw. You were right telling me that I saw this great image. But Daniel, that's only half the job. You've told me the dream. No doubt you got it right. You hit it right on the button. You've got that dream down to perfection. Every final detail is right. What good's the dream if I don't know what it means? So you got the dream right, Daniel. What about the interpretation? Because that's the other half of the deal. What does it mean? This statue that I've seen, what does it mean? This statue with a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, thighs of bronze, legs of iron, feet of iron and clay. This statue that is struck by a rock that is cut out without human hand and smashes that statue to smithereens, and that's blown away by the dust, like dust in the wind. And this rock that fills the whole earth, what does it mean? Listen, friends, in only 150 words, this dream outlines the main course of history from Babylon's day in 600 BC right down to the very climax of history. It starts with Babylon, and then it stretches generation after generation after generation right down to the close of human history. So Daniel says, this is the dream. This is the dream. And now I'm going to give you the interpretation. Now we will interpret it to the king, and he says what? You are that head of gold. How do you think Nebuchadnezzar felt? The head of gold. Daniel said, remember the image with the four metals? You, Nebuchadnezzar, are represented on that statue, that image, by the head of gold. Babylon, the golden kingdom. How suitable, how appropriate that it be represented by the head of gold. Friends, as we go through this prophecy together, we will find out that as the prophecy unfolds, that each part of this metal image represents a major world empire or nation that follow on one after another. And so Daniel stands before the king and he said, Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. Your kingdom, Babylon. And friends, it certainly was a golden kingdom. Probably the most magnificent, wealthy kingdom or empire the world has ever known. You know, historians tell us its walls, Herodotus tells us, its walls were 100 miles or 100 kilometers long. They were somewhere between 80 and 100 meters high. Imagine that. They were 8 meters wide. 2 chariots could ride abreast on top of that wall. 25 meters behind it was the second one. This city was impregnable. No one could ever overthrow this city. Ever, ever, ever. The magnificent river Euphrates flowed right through that city and provided all the water that they needed. And it was filled with treasure. The treasure of the world. The treasure of the empire. Historians tell us that right in the center there was a statue built of pure gold. A massive statue. Pure gold. You know how much it weighed? 22 tons of pure gold. It was a golden city. As I mentioned earlier, Nebuchadnezzar's palace, it is said, was the greatest building ever constructed in the history of mankind. And Nebuchadnezzar was so proud of this city. Do you know he put his official stamp on every brick in the buildings of that city? Every brick. He wanted to be part of it. The golden city that had a golden future. And Nebuchadnezzar wrote, they discovered, archaeologists, on a stone, this inscription: Babylon, the city which is the delight of my eyes, and which I have glorified, may it last for how long? So the start of the dream, just fantastic for Nebuchadnezzar. But the next part he didn't like quite so much, because Daniel went on and said, hold on, Nebuchadnezzar, there's more to the dream. He says, after you another kingdom will rise inferior to yours. Do you know Daniel lived to see that next kingdom overthrow Babylon? Remember I told you the walls were impregnable. No one could break through those walls. Impossible. Do you remember the story of the writing on the wall? The time of Belshazzar, who was co-regent with his father Nabonidus, the offspring of Nebuchadnezzar. They were so certain that this city could never be overthrown, that when the Medes and the Persians came and surrounded the city, they stood on the wall, waved to them, scoffed, and went and had a party. And Belshazzar said, the God of the Hebrews? Who's he? We conquered the Jews. We overthrew Jerusalem. We looted their temple. Go and get me some of those golden vessels that we looted out of that temple. Let's eat and drink out of them. That's exactly what they did. But you know, friends, 150 years beforehand, the prophet Isaiah predicted the name of the person who would overthrow Babylon. Gave his name, even spelt it right, Cyrus, and went into detail as to how he would overthrow magnificent Babylon. Because you see, Babylon was impregnable. This is what happened on the night when the writing by a mysterious hand was seen on the wall. Cyrus and the Medo-Persian army had surrounded the city. No hope of breaching the walls. But what they did was this. Told in detail 150 years beforehand. That's what they did. They built ditches upstream from the river. And at the precise moment that was most appropriate, they opened the dike and they took the river, the water from that river, away from its regular channel. No water running through the riverbed. And Cyrus then marched his armies along the riverbed. The great brass gates that protected the river from people doing just this were left open. They opened the gates, they marched into the city, and Cyrus captured Babylon with hardly a battle. Belshazzar, the nobles of Babylon were killed, and there was a new ruler on the seat of that empire, on the throne of that empire. And so the second great empire after Babylon was the Medes and the Persians. You know, friends, you can go over to London today, and you should never go to London without going to the British Museum. Wonderful place if you're interested in ancient history. It's just a treasure trove of ancient artifacts. And right there in the British Museum, you can see the Cyrus cylinder that was discovered by archaeologists as they excavated ancient Babylon. And here on the Cyrus cylinder, it tells the very story of how Cyrus overthrew Babylon. They then set up the largest empire the world had ever seen. It was an empire with a common language. An empire with one king who ruled supreme. It stretched from the borders of India right through here to North Africa. A wonderful, wonderful empire. Inferior to Babylon, but a fitting symbol is silver for the Medo-Persian Empire. But this empire wasn't to be the last. There was to be another. And Daniel continued his presentation to King Nebuchadnezzar. And he said, King, next, there'll be a third empire, a third kingdom. One of bronze will rule over the whole earth. Well, friends, you only have to open your history book. Every schoolboy knows that the power, the empire that overthrew the Medes and the Persians was the Bronze Empire of Greece. Let me tell you something amazing. The Greek soldiers wore bronze helmets. They wore bronze breastplates. They wore bronze leggings. How fitting that the prophecy chose bronze to symbolize and represent the great Grecian Empire that was led by a masterful young man by the name of Alexander the Great. Probably the greatest military genius the world has ever seen. At 20, he conquered Greece, all the city-states, and united them. At 24, he was Pharaoh of Egypt. At 25, he was Lord of Persia. He never lost a military battle. He's not called great for nothing. Alexander the Great. In 5 short years, my friends, he established the largest empire the world had ever seen. I'm going to tell you something interesting about Alexander the Great. How many of you were here the first program that we did here 2 weeks ago? Okay, good number of you. Remember, it was Alexander the Great who finally overthrew the city of Tyre. Remember? Remember the prophecy? When he had finally conquered Tyre, remember, he scraped all the dust from the ground, all the rubble, threw it into the ocean to make the causeway, remember? Then overthrew them and absolutely obliterated them. Those that weren't killed were sold off into slavery. Then he set his sights on Jerusalem, and he began to march his magnificent army toward Jerusalem. They had no defenders that could withstand Alexander the Great. What are they going to do? Are they going to be plundered again and their temple destroyed? I'll tell you what happened, friends. The priests of the temple went out, not soldiers, priests in their priestly garb. They went out and they met Alexander on the road outside of Jerusalem. And they said, "Sir, we've got something we want to show you." "What?" "Give us a minute." You know what they did? They took out the ancient scroll written by Daniel the prophet, including the one that we're looking at. You see, Alexander the Great was on his way to meet the great Persian army that was probably 10 times bigger than his army. A massive army. Over 1 million men in that army. And he was wondering, how am I going to fare against this massive army? And the priest said, "We already know. We already know." And they opened the prophecies of Daniel, including the one that we are looking at now. And they said, "According to our God, Jehovah God, you are going to gain victory over the Persians. The victory is yours." Alexander the Great read his own destiny in the writings of Daniel the prophet. He spared the city. And he allowed the Jews to practice their religion unhindered, without any problems. But even Alexander's kingdom wasn't to last forever. Daniel went on and he said, finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. For iron breaks and smashes everything, and as iron breaks things to pieces, it will crush and break all others. And so the fourth kingdom was the mighty kingdom of the Caesars, Rome. That kingdom lasted for over 500 years, my friends, and during that time, the Caesars of Rome built an empire bigger than and larger than anything that had ever been seen before. The Caesars were looked upon as god kings, and they ruled with an iron hand, with an iron fist, should I say. The whole then known world was subjugated at their feet. We know those magnificent Caesars by name: Julius Caesar, or some of them, Augustus, Tiberius, Nero, Vespasian. And the wealth of the empire flooded into their capital city, Rome. Rome was the heart of the empire, and there they built a forum with its magnificent triumphal arches to record their victories on the field of battle. And at the center of Rome was the golden milestone. Because the saying came to be that all roads lead to where? To Rome. All the roads throughout the empire, they led to the heart of Rome and to the great golden milestone. The Colosseum was the center of entertainment. 50,000 people could crowd in here for a sporting event. Did I say sporting event? To watch the gladiators fight to the death. To watch the gladiators fight wild animals. Their lust for blood became such that there were some days when 5,000 wild animals were slaughtered in the Colosseum. That's where the gladiators fought to the death. And this Roman Empire seemed invincible. It stretched from the Atlantic Ocean right through to the Euphrates River. As I said, it ruled for over 500 years. And this great empire seemed invincible. Ruled the world. Then Daniel went further and he said, King Nebuchadnezzar, just as you saw the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be what? He said, King, did you see the feet and toes? Iron and clay, some strong, some brittle. You see, friend, the mixture of iron and clay in the feet and toes represents the breakup of that Roman Empire into smaller kingdoms and nations. And so instead of a fifth world empire, Rome would be divided into numerous kingdoms, symbolized by the 10 toes of the image. Unbelievable, inconceivable, but it's true. Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what happened. If I'd been writing the script, no doubt there would have been a fifth world empire. But God said no, there won't be. There will not be a fifth world empire. It'll be divided up into smaller kingdoms, smaller nations, symbolized by the 10 toes. It's exactly what happened. You see, friends, Rome crumbled in 2 ways. One from within and one from without. You see, the wealth of the empire flowed into the capital city, Rome. The wealth and the booty. And the lifestyle changed from one of an ordinary Roman lifestyle to one of luxury and extravagance. And so the society of Rome, that great empire, was white and eaten from within. It was rotten on the inside. Rotten from within, with corruption in politics, with crime and violence on the streets. Sexual immorality was rampant. Rotten to the core. And then from without, as the empire weakened from within, they faced attack after attack from without. It was the barbarian tribes to the north who were making their way down and over time weakened Rome and crushed Rome. And so from without, by 476 BC, these barbarian tribes had completely conquered Rome, and 10 of these tribes became the nations of modern Europe. As you look at those tribes and where they are located, friends, how amazing. Exactly as Daniel predicted so many years ago, 1,000 years ago. You see, the Alemanni became the Germans, the Burgundians, the Swiss, the Franks, the French, the Lombards, the Italians, the Anglo-Saxons, the English, the Serbi, the Portuguese, the Visigoths, the Spanish, the Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Vandals were made extinct. And you know that Daniel even foretold that these 3 would become extinct in another prophecy that we'll look at. And then he went on and he said, King Nebuchadnezzar, right down there, centuries in the future, he said, as the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly what? Friends, just look at the map of Europe today. You have some powerful nations there. And you have some very weak, brittle ones. You have nations there that are economically powerful, that have political influence, that have military might. And then you have others who have nothing. What did Daniel say? Some of them will be strong, but not all. Others will be weak, brittle, like clay. And then he says, King, as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of man. He's saying they're going to try to unite again. They're going to mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere one to another. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible predicted that the nations of modern Europe would attempt to unite their nations into one empire again. And the Bible suggests that they would do it in 3 ways. They would make this attempt. They would try to unite Europe first politically by war, then economically by currency and trade, and then thirdly socially by intermarriage. The 3 methods that God predicted they would try to unite and make a 5th world empire, a continuation of the Roman Empire. That's the 3 methods they would use, the Bible says. Friends, the Bible predicted that the nations of modern Europe would mix together and try to unite. But the Bible predicted that no matter what they tried, no matter how they did it, they would never, ever become fully united again. The Bible predicted that there would always be separate nations in Europe. And they would never become a single entity again, in the same way that the United States, for example, is a single nation. 3 ways they would try to unite. Politically by war, economically by currency and trade, socially by intermarriage. Let me tell you something interesting. Napoleon Bonaparte saw himself as the next Caesar. He wanted to rule Europe like a Caesar. And so he divorced Josephine and he married Maria Louisa of Austria to unite the great Napoleonic line with the Habsburg dynasty in an attempt to unite Europe. And after he did it, this is what he said: there will be a European system, a European code of law, a European court of appeal, and there will be one Europe. What did the Bible say? They shall not adhere or plead or stick together. 4 clear, crisp words. You know, friends, many have tried to break this prophecy and to unite Europe. Some of the greatest military minds the world has ever seen. Charlemagne tried and failed. Charles V, he tried. Friends, these were the supermen of their age, their generation. Louis XIV of France tried and failed. Napoleon himself, he came so close. So close. It was his dream to be the next Caesar, to sit on the throne of a united Europe. But his plans came unstuck in a Russian winter on the Eastern Front, where his armies were decimated by the cold and by the Russian Stoics. Napoleon came so close. And then there was Kaiser Wilhelm II, leader of the German people. He decided that he would unite Europe. And as he was making his war plans, somebody came up to him and said, Kaiser, I thought I should just tell you that, you know, Daniel the prophet, he's made a prediction. You can read it in the Bible book of Daniel. Kaiser, he says that Europe's never going to be united. You know what Kaiser said in return? He said, Daniel's prophecy doesn't fit with my plans. What are you talking about? I can't accept that. Where Charlemagne and others have failed, I will succeed. Remember, friends, Charles Hamlet was buried in the American War Cemetery not far from the city of Metz in northern France. In Metz, there is a huge cathedral, a magnificent building. Around this building are statues of the prophets and the apostles. It truly is a magnificent cathedral. And the people of Metz desperately needed to put a lead roof on their cathedral, but they didn't have enough money. These were hard times. All the money was going into war preparations with the Kaiser. The Kaiser heard of their need, and he said, listen, I'll foot the bill. Oh, they were so excited. The Kaiser was going to pay for the lead roof on their cathedral. He said, but there's one condition. They said, yes, what is it? He said, I want you to take the head of one of those statues in front of your cathedral there, and I want you to replace it with my head. They said, okay, we need a lead roof. We changed the head. No trouble. Which statue? He said, well, near the front of the cathedral is a statue of Daniel the prophet. Daniel the prophet has made a prediction that I'm going to prove wrong. So he said, I want you to take his head off and put mine there. You can see Daniel's holding the scroll and pointing to his prediction. So Kaiser said, remove his head and replace it with mine. Friends, we know the outcome of Kaiser's plan. Do you know over 16 million people died in World War I because Kaiser had a plan to unite Europe? After World War I, as time dragged on and they got into the late 20s and into the 30s, along came Adolf Hitler. He came to Metz and he said to the people there, put Daniel's head back on. Get Kaiser's off. He got it wrong. Years. 1,000 years. Friends, we already discussed the outcome of Hitler's plans. His dreams ended in his bunker there in Berlin. You won't even find it today. I can assure you, I've been there many, many times. They won't let you near it. His plans, his dreams ended in infamy. And he joins the long list: Charlemagne, Charles V, Louis XIV, Napoleon, Kaiser Wilhelm, and Hitler. They've all tried. But what did Daniel say? You saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. They will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere one to another. And so, friends, as we look at the prediction, where are we today? Where are we living today? This prediction has been fulfilled in every minute detail. We don't live in the time of Babylon, the head of gold. We don't live in the time of Medo-Persia, the chest and arms of silver. We don't live in the time of Greece, the thighs of bronze. We don't live during the great Roman Empire, the legs of iron. We live right down in the time of the divided nations of modern Europe. Remember what Daniel said? In the time of those kings. Which kings? The nations of modern Europe. The God of heaven will do what? Will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will be left to another people. It will crush, he went on to say, all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure for how long? Forever. Remember Franz Hasel? The German soldier, pacifist, with a simple faith. He believed the Bible and its prophecies. Where are we living, ladies and gentlemen? We are living in the toenails of the great statue. The next major event on the world scene will be the coming of Jesus Christ. That rock symbolized Jesus the rock, the cornerstone. He's coming back, my friends. He's coming to establish his kingdom. And you know what that means for you and for me? Listen to what Jesus said. Fear not, little flock. For it is the Father's good pleasure to give you what? The kingdom. Oh, my friends, these are no ordinary times in which we live. Jesus is coming soon. It's my prayer that each and every person here makes a decision, makes a commitment, makes plans to be ready to meet Jesus when he comes. Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the Bible and for the great prophecies that tell us where we are living in the stream of time. Tell us what the future holds in store for us and our families. Thank you for the hope of a soon coming Saviour. Lord, we know that the powers that be cannot solve the problems of this world. Only you can. Please come soon, Jesus. And may every one of us here be found ready to meet you Well, this is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Friends, just a couple of announcements. Byron, not too bad today. Sort of just a minute or two.
Hey,